Welcome to Follow the Content Leaders, a podcast where we want to learn how leaders, entrepreneurs, CEOs, coaches, and consultants have built their businesses and exactly what role has content played in their strategies. Welcome back, everyone. I'm here today with Leonard Grape. Hello, Leonard. How are you doing?
Hi, Monica. I'm doing great and I'm really excited to be here. So, thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Thank you for coming. I'm super happy to talk with you a bit today. Leonard is a business coach and a CEO who grew his own agency from zero to 250K. And you're now helping other agency founders and solopreneurs increase their monthly revenue, right? So tell us more about you, Leonard. Who are you and what is it exactly that you help agency founders with?
Yeah, well, thank you for that warm introduction, Monica. I think that sort of like captures who I am and a little bit of my background. But very briefly, I used to be a burnt out corporate professional. I stayed
Mm-hmm.
in one job for 10 years, but that's actually me establishing my career foundation in a corporate setting. But after 10 years, why I learned so much in that work experience from marketing, branding, to sales, operations, and management, towards the latter part of my career, I felt like I needed a new beginning. And
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't feeling happy anymore with the fact that I'm climbing the rat race, as they would call it. So at the height of the pandemic, I quit my job. I threw my stability, and Monica, people thought I was crazy because I just got promoted. I had like a stable career, but here I am. I quit that to start my agency. So I've been running my agency for close to 4 years now. It's called The Vineyard. But early this year, I found myself having the opportunity to do some business coaching with fellow agency founders and solopreneurs. So now most of my time, my energy, and days are actually spent as a business coach running Lunar Legends. So I think that's the gist of who I am professionally. But deep within me, I'm just a very simple guy who escaped the city to now live in the
Mm-hmm.
tropical part of the Philippines. I'm a dad to an adorable 2 year old and a husband to my best friend. So that's who I am essentially, Monica.
That's beautiful. I think I can relate to several of the things you just explained. As you know, I also spend a long time in the corporate world, specifically in law, so kind of understand that feeling of doing something that people think you're crazy. But in any case, congratulations for being in business now for almost 4 years with your agency. If you were to speak to someone that's just starting a similar journey, just quitting their corporate background after 10 years, everyone telling them they're crazy, what's the one thing that you would tell him or her at that moment?
That's a great question, Monica. And to be honest, back in those days, and I was really trying to make that hard decision, I didn't have everything figured out. And if there's one thing that I felt during the times that I was so scared, Monica, because I spent 10 years, that was my comfort zone. I knew that I was thriving, except for the fact that I was no longer happy. But during the time, my mindset is my fear of what if should be bigger than my fear of failure. Meaning, like, I
Mhm.
didn't want to look back in my life and just stay in that quote unquote not the risky path because I was afraid to fail, or I was afraid not knowing what's out there if I quit my job and start my own business. So if there's someone listening to this and they're like thinking about starting their own business, they want to jump the gun and take that risk, stop trying to figure out if everything will work out. Because unfortunately, the only way for you to find out if it's going to work out is if you go there and try it. Now, in
Mhm.
my case, I was a little bit reckless in the sense that I started my agency with zero clients lined up. So if you are planning to go out there and then quit your job, I felt like I would have taken more time to at least build my savings, for example, more of my savings, have enough
Mhm.
bandwidth to so you can run your business without so much stress. So in a nutshell, what I would advise somebody is, don't try to like get everything in a perfect level, because you're not going to get there. So usually the first step is the hardest thing to do. But if you can, if you want to be a little more practical and strategic about it, try to build some buffer for yourself in terms of your savings, your monetary buffer. And then if you can, have at least like a couple or three clients before you jump the
Mm-hmm.
gun. But if you're someone who's just, because in my case, I felt, Monica, that I couldn't do that as a side hustle. I started doing it actually only as a side hustle, doing brand consulting, doing brand projects on the side, but it was tough because I didn't have my weekends. I was practically
Mm-hmm.
doing sales calls over lunch breaks. And usually I do client presentations at night, or if they really need me during the day, I would have to file a leave. So you have two ways. You just go out there and try it out. But usually that's the riskiest way to do it. If you're a little
Mm-hmm.
risk averse and you want to have a little bit of certainty, but you can't have 100% certainty, right? So at least have some buffer financially. Get your initial client, even if it's a free client, just so you understand your bearing and get a little sense of it, and then just go out there and do it, Monica.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. I did a bit the same reckless decision of also living without savings or anything planned in advance. And while it's true that for me it was not such a big risk, also because I could still practice as a lawyer if I wanted, but I did not have any savings or clients lined up. But at the end of the day, what helped me make the decision is a bit of looking at the worst case scenario. So for me, the worst case scenario, if everything went wrong, meant that I had to go back to being a lawyer and go back to doing what I was already doing. So worse than how I was at the moment that I was taking the decision, I was never gonna end up in a worse situation. So that kind of gave me a lot of peace of mind and helped me take this step forward.
Exactly. Now on the point of identifying the risk, at least in my context, when you mentioned that, Monica, it got me reminded when I was evaluating risks, I felt like me staying in the same company for another 3 to 5 years was actually way riskier than me trying to start something new and let myself grow and figure out other ways to make money, make an impact out
Mm-hmm.
in the world, and ultimately, just try and be happy doing what something that I truly love. So that's also, another aspect of the risk assessment that I think is worth noting, Monica.
Yeah, of course. You have to take into account the risk of taking the action, but what's the risk of not taking that action too, right? So, completely. Super interesting understanding where your decision came from, where were you aiming to go, and now I'm looking to understand a bit better how did you get here, right? So, you quit your job, you have nothing lined up, and how did you get your first clients? Did content play any part in that? How did that process go?
Yeah, that's a very important question. To be honest, Monica, at the beginning of my agency career, I didn't have any platform to do any content because I was just starting out. And again, the context is I was an employee for the past 10 years. So I didn't even bother to like open my LinkedIn. I had my LinkedIn account back then. I didn't even use
Mm-hmm.
it to look for another job, to be honest. But during the early days, what I did to get my first few clients was to do what I call leveraging your power base. Power base
Mm-hmm.
is basically a method of you looking at what's your closest network that you can actually take advantage of. If
Mm-hmm.
you're starting out a business and you want to look for a potential client, but you don't have an audience base yet, you don't have that level of network that you can actually sell to at the beginning, leveraging your power base would mean calling your family, for example. You might have your parents working in a company who might have friends or colleagues there who might have network from other places. Calling your friends is another thing. And
Mm-hmm.
one more thing for me is reaching out to my colleagues that I trust enough to tell them that I'm going to quit my job and look for potential clients. And to me, it was just consistently trying to put the word out, just getting the
Mm-hmm.
word out at the beginning. So The way it was for me, like every lunch break, I would make at least like 3 to 5 sales calls. And I wasn't trying to sell that person. My line was
Mm-hmm.
something like, "Hey, Monica, how are you?" And then catch up a little bit and then tell him that, "No, I'm planning to quit my job and resign. I have like an agency lined up. I'm going to do this and that. Would you know somebody who you think might benefit from this service?" So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I actually did at the beginning. And fortunately for me, I had a fellow a college mate basically, and I hang out with him. He's a lawyer, and we weren't
Mm-hmm.
practically talking about how can I help him, but I just presented like a quick idea, like, "Hey, this is what my agency is gonna be. If ever you know someone, I'd be happy to just talk and sit down and see if I can help out." He turned out to be one of my first official clients because apparently he
Mm-hmm.
needed some help with brand development for his upcoming startup grocery mobile app. The other
Mm-hmm.
one was I was invited to become a guest speaker, a keynote speaker in a graduation in my high school alma mater. So it's
Mm-hmm.
probably not the best place where you're gonna think that you might get a client, right? But because I was catching up with the president of the school, and she was just asking about like, "Hey, how's your work? How's everything?" So I just casually told her like, "I'm actually leaving, so I haven't told a lot of people and haven't publicized it, but I'm leaving, and I'm planning to do some consulting work and start this agency." And then it turned out she knew somebody who actually needed help on the brand and operation side, which was something that I did in the last few years of my career. That turned out to be
Mm-hmm.
my first high ticket consulting project. So
Mm-hmm.
at least at the beginning of my career, you
Amazing.
just really have to put yourself out there. But mind you, I had a lot of calls who just said, "Yeah, oh hey, good luck, man," and didn't bother to give me anything. But you gotta play the numbers game at the beginning, I think, and leverage what you have. If you don't have a platform to write content, then might as well leverage your power base.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the simplicity of that, right? Just having natural conversations with people you already know. You don't need a fancy website, you don't need a fancy logo or a funnel or anything of what people tell you that you need. You just need to have conversations with real people and find someone that actually needs what you want to offer. And then from there, you can start building all of the layers of everything else, right?
Precisely.
And then when did you start maybe to professionalize a bit more the system? When did you actually get into content, and how did you start out with that?
Yeah, I had an improper perspective about marketing and content, unfortunately, when I started. Marketing in my head during that time was just having a social handle, having a website, precisely what you said, having a
Mm-hmm.
logo, and then, just putting out content, and then leads would come. I
Mm-hmm.
started doing that probably about 8 months in, because I felt like I couldn't sustain doing daily sales calls or just, trying to scramble where will I get my next client. I knew I had to build a system and a
Mm-hmm.
content marketing platform that could be a leverage for me. But I didn't really get traction because the approach that I did was, let's just have a presence. We'll do everything. We had Facebook, we had Instagram. After 1 year, I launched my own podcast. And then during that year, I had my TikTok. I launched my YouTube. So I was basically all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
The way I tried to like really zero in was, I think within the second year, towards the half of our second year, we were gaining traction, but I could already see that it's not going to be sustainable. So what I did was completely removed everything else and then just zeroed in on what I like to call as a 1-2 combination, meaning what's your
Mm-hmm.
number one primary marketing platform and what's going to be your secondary marketing platform. During the time we zeroed in, I started zeroing in on LinkedIn, and then my
Mm-hmm.
secondary one was the podcast. So we had marketing, quote unquote, marketing presence like about 1 year into the game, but we weren't able to really capitalize on it because we had the wrong approach until probably about close to 2 years, Monica.
Mm-hmm. And how did that change then? When did you change the approach and why?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm a big believer of really going deep into something. I admit that I had the wrong mindset towards marketing. So I remember it was
Mm-hmm.
actually fairly recent. Last year I started really posting regularly on LinkedIn. But on from January to March, it was all about me, just, I see people posting carousel and I just write carousel. Or I
Mm-hmm.
post carousels, and then I see people just doing surveys and I just do survey. I lack the strategy and really like going deeper into the platform. What changed for me, the turning point for me, was when I realized that I really have to go deep into this. Meaning, I need to treat LinkedIn as an independent platform that is native on its own if I want to make this work. So I had to
Mm-hmm.
understand impressions, I had to understand engagements, I had to understand the format, the hook, the rehook, the body, all of those nitty gritty. And true enough, I think after about 3 months, I gained a little bit of traction, but I only got real results probably about 6 months when I was really doing it daily. And I was putting in a lot
Mm-hmm.
of effort, Monica, day in and day out. Like if I work from 8 to 5, that the rest of the time, like 6 to 8, I was just gonna like obsess reading all these other big creators on LinkedIn, study how they write their posts, understand the
Mm-hmm.
psychology behind it. All of this with me trying to say that when I started trying to focus on a single platform, that allowed me to really understand how it works, and thus giving me the eye to really identify what's wrong with what I'm doing and what are the points for improvements
Mm-hmm.
that I can do. So this year I'm very happy with the way that my LinkedIn is growing and how it's helped me and my clients gain some business. So that was, I think, the turning point when I really just said, like I said, told my team, let's drop YouTube, let's drop TikTok. We're not gonna do Instagram and Facebook. Let's just do LinkedIn. Let's study and be great at LinkedIn. And then I retained the
Mm-hmm.
podcast mainly because we pivoted to a new industry. And that became a powerful tool for me to enter an industry that I had zero reputation in. So I think that was the
Of
turning point.
course.
And up to this point, I've been trying to discipline myself that, it's just going to be LinkedIn. And the more I stay focused with just one platform, the more I realize the things that I do not know about it.
Mm-hmm.
So people feel like they have to just go out there and try everything. That's the difference between being busy and being productive. I was busy for the
Mm-hmm.
first 24 months, but I only became positively productive when I just really zeroed in and focused on one thing, Monica.
Yeah, super interesting. I think you described the journey of many people on LinkedIn. Like you start by following everything that you see, everything that other people are doing. You do carousels because you see others do carousels. You do that because you see others do whatever that is. But then you have to take a step back, right? And kind of build your own strategy and test your own formats, your own topics, and kind of build up your unique strategy for LinkedIn. And this looks different for everyone. No profiles are the same. So doing that exercise already proves that you kind of did a lot of work in this process. And then I'm curious to understand a bit better which parts of all of this learning process did you enjoy, or which parts did you kind of hate the most? How was that journey for you?
That's a very good question, Monica. The first thing that's coming into my mind is the part that I hate, kind of hate, and it's the fact that when I started, I focused a lot on the vanity metric. I'm gonna be
Mm-hmm.
honest with you, like every single time. And I think at the beginning it was okay because you're trying to see what works and you're trying to see how your posts are improving, your strategy, iterations are working. But I think there's a caution that you shouldn't do it just for the sake of, like wanting to get, people call it, I love to call it like dopamine hits, right?
Mm-hmm.
You use it
Totally.
strategically in a way that, excuse me, you do it in a way that it helps inform your actions because of the data, but not because you just want to like feel good because people are liking your posts, because people are
Mm-hmm.
sharing your post. And so now I've completely shifted my mindset. Instead of looking at what's happening, I focus or more on who's in there. Like, because now I use
Mm.
LinkedIn mainly as a revenue generating asset, as a marketing asset for me. I still do my like bi-weekly analytics study, but it's more about like, okay, this one had a little bit of good traction. What happened there?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't feel bad anymore if I get like a less than 1,000 impressions, sometimes even, because I know that's a bottom of funnel post. So that's the part that I didn't like. And not being able to appreciate my own journey, because every now and then I get to compare, like, oh, that guy is growing so fast. Oh, that guy
Mm-hmm.
is doing very well. People are really liking his post. But as you said, no two profiles are the same. So I didn't have that right mindset at the beginning. But what I loved the most, Monica, was the fact that I felt like I was getting better at it every single day, every single week,
Mm-hmm.
every single month. And that made me feel fulfilled. Even if, for example,
Mm-hmm.
during the first 6 months, I didn't exactly like get the results that I wanted. I felt like that established the foundation for me to realize everything that I did wrong at the beginning, right?
Of
So that I
course.
wouldn't repeat them again. So right now, like, I enjoy the fact that if I look at my post and I edit it and I critique it, I now see some nuances that I'm not able to see in the past. Like, I would see,
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, this one is more about me than about my audience. So how can I make this better and rewrite it and refine it a little bit? When I write my post now, I understand what's the psychology behind this. How can I help someone be persuaded to take action to make his situation better? And I feel like that's empowering. You're becoming an enabler. So that's
Mm-hmm.
constant desire to learn and improve. I think that's one thing that I really love. And it made me realize that I actually love writing, not just when I became a founder, but ever since I was much, much younger, Monica. I wanted to be a writer. As far as I remember, back when I was in high school, when the first time I encountered figures of speech. But I was more of a
Mm-hmm.
literary writer back then. But now it sort of like reignited my love for writing and how I can use it not just to, like advance my own interest, but advance the community that I'm trying to serve.
Yeah, super interesting, right? How sometimes we need to make all the mistakes to then actually kind of be like, okay, yeah, now I can identify in a bit better where I want to go to. And so cool that it ignited a beautiful love, like it is a love for writing for you, which it's also my case. So I love that LinkedIn did that for you, right? It's amazing. I'm curious now to understand because I've seen you've done all your content by yourself, right? You write all your content. If ever you were to
Yeah.
hire someone to write content for you, what would be the number one quality that you'd be looking on that person to have?
I love how the questions keep on getting tougher and tougher and more interesting, Monica.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm loving it. Thank you for that question, Monica. Well, for
It's
me,
the
I
last one, I
think,
promise.
okay, well, knowing what I know now and all the mistakes that I made in the past, I think the number one probably for me is understanding the psychology behind copywriting, because
Mm-hmm.
anybody can write Googleable stuff, right? Anybody can whip up a post and it can look great. But if it doesn't have the psychology behind it, the real strategic and intentional psychology that makes people read it, that makes people be emotionally attached to the post, that makes
Mm-hmm.
people buy into who you are, makes people, really just build that trust and affinity with what you offer. I think that's going to be the number one for me. Because
Mm-hmm.
the way I wrote my post at the beginning were all like Googleable stuff, like 5 ways to build a brand, like
Yeah.
3 ways to differentiate your business. But it's different when somebody actually writes it with a clear psychology. Why are you using this certain word choices? Who are you
Mm-hmm.
trying to speak with this headline or hook? And why does it matter? And how are you
Yeah.
gonna like I'm rereading the I forgot the title of the book, but it's by Joseph Sugarman. And he has this basic
Mm-hmm.
principle that the only purpose of any sentence in your copy is to lead the reader to the next sentence. So
Mm-hmm.
that, I think,
Yes.
essentially captures the importance of psychology, right? If you write something, why would the reader continue reading? What would it mean for them? So, to your question, I think if I can only just choose one quality, it's his or her understanding of copywriting psychology.
Yeah, so important, right? Many people think copywriting is about writing, whereas in reality, it's much more about psychology, as you just mentioned. Awesome. So it's been great chatting with you. I have just one last question. It's going to be a fast one, and I hope an easy one. And that is,
Okay.
if you were to recommend me one book, which book would you recommend me?
You promise it's not gonna be tough, but I think this is gonna be the toughest one. Mainly because I've read a lot of books and I love so many books. But maybe I'll just mention a book that I feel like helped me really believe in the potential of me being an entrepreneur. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
book called The $100 Startup by Chris Gullibo.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Okay.
a beautiful book that teaches you that you don't need to like get the biggest of capital. You don't need the complex systems. You don't need like a multi-layer marketing funnels and several marketing platforms to actually build a successful business. It's a book that
Mm-hmm.
shows you a lot of case stories about successful entrepreneurs who figured out a way to change their current life situations and transform it into something better by taking risk and starting a business that doesn't require a capital of more than $100.
Great, super. I'm going to check it out. I didn't have it on my list, so always happy to add the new book. And thanks again for joining us today. I hope to keep in touch with you and maybe have you on a further episode down the line.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure and I enjoyed the conversation. I wish you more success on your podcast, Monica.
Thank you so much, Leonard. Bye bye.
Bye.